There's not gonna be a tornado. It's just a thunderstorm. Everything's gonna be okay. Why weren't you answering my calls?
Look, I'm sorry.
I think it's an EF5.
What the hell's an EF5?
It's like when two tornadoes come together and they form one giant tornado.
Mom, I think something might be wrong.
So this movie is really hard to talk about because of all the things that happen in the back half of it, which are the meatier areas that I would love to just dive into with you. But I guess where I'd like to start is there's a sequence in here, and I don't want to reveal all of what happens in it, but it was one of those scenes where I have sleep paralysis, and so I can only kind of like match the feeling of it, and it makes me feel like my soul is just being pulled towards the floor in like a get out kind of fashion. But there's one single moment where that happens. It involves the saying, I'm a good boy. And so I'm curious, like, what it was like for you to kind of use these like auditory kind of visual like reaction, because you're leaning pretty heavily, you need your actors reactions to kind of sell what we're seeing, and so a lot of it's left up to our imagination. So what was it like trying to navigate like how you were going to make that look visually, and working with your actors to try to get them to communicate what we cannot see?
I did it like a haunted house, where like that's what's scariest about a haunted house, right? It's the things that you're hearing, it's the things that you're not necessarily seeing. You know you're going to see something that's going to scare you. You don't know what it is. You hear the chains, you hear the screaming, you hear these things in the background, maybe the walls shake. And so the way that we constructed that sequence was very much with that same thought in mind. So it was actually, you know, obviously we have a pretty explosive voice cameo in that scene.
Yeah.
We didn't tell any of the actors that in advance. We also, we did all the audio design for that sequence before we shot it. And we didn't tell that as well. So we did one take of it where, you know, a lot of times in a movie where you have actors reacting to something, there's like an AD or a script supervisor, or in some cases the director, someone's just yelling. Like, they're off stage, or they're off screen yelling, okay, jump, okay, there's wind, okay, there's thunder. Like, you're yelling, right. They're happening, and then the actors have to really, you know, go deep into themselves to pull out that performance. So we did that very traditional way for the first take. And then the second take, we actually had Max, the writer, come and hit the button, the play button on the audio design that we'd done. And it was just all hell broke loose. So those that you see, they were genuinely terrified because they had no idea what was happening. It's very loud, and you've got this voice coming out that that you're not expecting. And then we also had things happening in the room. You know, there's some physical elements of that room that change, and it's all one shot. So as the camera moves, these things are happening. We also didn't tell the actors that those things would be happening. So it was genuine terror.
So if it doesn't spoil anything, is it read differently in the script that particular moment, since what we get is the actor's natural reaction, but did they have any sense of what to expect with that moment?
So the I'm a good boy thing is pretty much executed. That part of the sequence is executed exactly as scripted. And that's actually one of the things that was like the moment that I knew I was going to make this movie. It was the only time I've ever jumped. I've had a jump scare while reading on the page. I've never read a novel. I've never read a script. I've never read anything that actually made me physically jump.
Yeah.
And so up to that moment, it's exactly as scripted. The rest of it was really just us figuring out, okay, how do we get from this moment, which is really heightened and really scary, to the next moment where the family is at the mirror together, which is really funny. Yeah. How do we bridge the gap? And we realized that we needed a bit of a cool down, and that the cool down can be scary. It can have some little jumps in it itself, but it's gotta emotionally get us to a point where we're ready to accept the humor that comes next. So that was all. That's one of those things you hear about where it's like, they always talk about like the Michael Bay movies where there's like a slug line that says there's a car crash, and it's like this 5-minute thing, and there's 100 car explosions. That was like our very micro version of that.
Yeah. It took me back to watching The Gate when I was a kid, when they say, "You've been bad." That's exactly one of those kind of moments. But I'm also curious about navigating, I don't want to say different tones, but feels that happen throughout. Because there's times where, because it's based off of like the different characters that you have here. You know, you obviously have Pat Healy's character as the dad, who has, you know, there's moments in it that look like The Shining with him beating on the door. And then some of the moments with like Mel kind of feel like, you know, Ginger Snaps or The Craft, and you know, Nightmare on Elm Street and other things are happening here. So was it difficult to try to you know, weave this thread throughout all of them to make sure that they all communicate this a very similar feel, if you can gather what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that was something that we were in the beginning overly self-conscious about, and then started to get out of our own way, and I guess become more confident in understanding. Like, some of my favorite movies have, I guess, what you would call tonal shifts, which I think a lot of times is something that people point to as like not criticism in like the capital C sense, but like a negative, like a criticism that people levy against movies if there's a tonal shift. But I think if you look at movies like The Thing, like that movie's hilarious and terrifying, and you feel emotional at moments. And I think that to me was what we wanted to accomplish, was like, this movie to me, while not a COVID movie per se, does have a lot in common with the experience that we've all had, and I think serves as an allegory for the experience that we've had over the past 18 months or however long it's been now. And I think that there have been moments in this that have been terrifying, moments that I think everybody has felt a range of emotions. And I think that some of us are of a disposition that when horrible things happen, you lean into really dark humor. So for me, that it was, in talking with the cast and crew, when we were discussing tone, it is like, the tone is the tone of the year of 2020, which is stupid and scary and devastating and at times hilarious. And I think that that's just what we had to lean into. And I'm really happy with I think how those things turned out. I think if you're able to go through that range of emotions in the film, then the people who will dig it will dig it.
Right. So with those more horrifying moments that, especially like some of the images, which I don't want to spoil what they are, but how do you know that those moments of horror are clicking and working on set?
They're fun. That's how you know, is when you get done with the take and everybody's kind of laughing a little, you know that you did something right. It's like, it feels good. It's like, I don't know, pick your sport, golf or baseball. When you hit the ball right, you just get that feeling. It's almost indescribable. I don't know how you necessarily say it. It's a similar thing when you nail one of those scary moments. It's, everybody's laughing because you need to break the tension, because the tension worked. And if that's not the result, if you get no reaction at the end, you need to redesign it and shoot it again.
Gotcha. So with like the allegorical nature to the film, with some of those horrific images, whether it's a tongue or a snake, do you purposely put things out there that you don't even understand so you can wrestle with its meaning like everyone else does? Or do you have a pretty good sense of like what everything is?
We made a conscious decision, Max and I, at the beginning of this process, that we would not allow our minds to project what was outside the door.
Okay.
So that is like, we know the world is not in a good place. We know there's some horrific things out there. We know some of those horrific things make their way into the room. I've heard theories from people that I've talked to who've seen the movie about what's out there, and like, I'm really happy to entertain those, and that's a lot of fun. I'm glad that I didn't allow myself to go there before making the movie, because I think it would have been objectively worse. I think that whatever your mind creates out of your own nightmares is going to be more personal for you. I think from a film viewing experience, it's more fun to let your mind fill in the blanks. But I think from like a deeper, more meaningful place, not to get too serious about it. But I think that if that can help you grapple with some of the things that, you're experiencing in your own life, or some of the things that worry you, or some of the things that keep you up at night, I'd rather, create that collaboration with the audience and let the audience go there as opposed to spoon feeding.
Sure, sure. So because you're, I guess this kind of goes along with what you were saying, but because you're playing with ambiguity here, are there, excuse me, are you thinking about what images the audience will be intelligent enough to pick up and what may overwhelm them? Do you think about how far, maybe too far, are you thinking about that balance at all?
Um, I don't think, I mean, I don't want anything to be confusing. I think there's a difference between creating ambiguity and creating confusion.
Sure.
And um, not to confuse also confusion with chaos, because I think this movie has some moments that are chaotic
Hmm.
and ambiguous, but I hope that they're not confusing. And so that was the line for me. If you're gonna watch this and not understand plot wise or sequence wise, like what is happening, that's a problem. If you're not going to understand why it's happening, that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you go about working out the visual identity of the film since you're primarily dealing with one location, working that out with your cinematographer or the talks that you had with Max on how it would look?
We wanted to create a set that told a story on its own. So
Hmm.
if you were to walk onto that set without anything happening before the movie started, you would be able to look at it, you would be able to pick up elements of the story, you would be able to learn something about who these people are and what they're going to be going through and the world in which they're living. And I think that while a lot of that, people won't pick up on their first, second, third view, whatever, if you really wanted to dive into the production design, you would find some Easter eggs there.
Hmm.
Um, that was important to us, that we let the cast know what those were before the movie started, so that they felt like they were really in a place that they were fully immersed in this world, and there was no world outside of this bathroom. So the same way that the characters in the movie are trapped there, the actors were in a space that they knew well enough, and that they felt connected enough to, that they could really go there and feel like, I don't care that there's 15 crew members outside of this set right now. This thing and the four of us are all that exists.
Right, right. So how does, as you mentioned earlier, with you're leaving images here or certain thoughts for us to wrestle with, and we bring whatever we bring to it. How does a film like this affect your psychology? Are you appreciating things more? Are you appreciating other things less? Are you doing some deep dives into some messed up things? Are you getting like insights into humanity that you had never seen before?
Gone through waves. It was extremely cathartic to make the movie,
Mm.
because we did shoot it in sequence. And so we shot everything that happens in the bathroom in perfect sequence. And then we shot our last 2 days, all the flashbacks off set. And going through that experience of being trapped in this little campus with all these same people making this movie on the same set, and watching that set get grosser every day, and watching it get bloodier every day, and having it start to smell, and going through that, it was stressful by the end. Like, we were ready to get out of there. And it was, we shot this in October in Michigan. We didn't see daylight for a month. Like, that's not good for you. It's not good for your psyche, especially after a year of essentially being trapped inside. It was rough. And then it was really funny too, because it's almost like somebody who's in an abusive relationship. As soon as we got out of that bathroom and we were out in the real world shooting our other scenes, I wanted back in. I wasn't
Mm.
ready. It was
Yeah.
really overwhelming. From a production standpoint, to be dealing with company moves and locations that we don't own and control, and location owner who wants us to leave because we're shooting too late. I was just like, get me back in that bathroom, man. This is awful. But it was cathartic, because it was also like, this was like, we're still in this weird pandemic world that we were in at the time, but it felt like, and I think this is what I like about the film, is that it ends, right? Like,
Yeah.
what weird uncertainty we're going through in the world right now, this movie is 97 minutes and then it's over. And similarly, like, we shot the movie and it was over. It was like, I loved every minute of it, but it was also a relief to have it behind us. Since then, it's been very interesting. I never had a dream that I was in hell before making this movie, and I
Mhm.
have it regularly now. And it's always the same thing. I'm always trapped in a place that has no windows. The environments are always different. I'm always with a different group of people, but it's always a group dynamic situation, and I'm trapped in a location that I can't get out of. and that moment of realization of truly being physically trapped just never existed for me. I'm not a claustrophobic person, so that's been interesting. So I guess that's the fallout now.
So what you're saying is you're gonna do like a comedy next or something to exercise these feelings.
No, I'm probably gonna do another horror film.
But when I look over your filmography, I mean, you said that you're going to do another horror movie, but there's like, In a World, producing In a World, like that's a movie that I really appreciate, that I get a lot out of. I'm curious because I can't really find a common thread from project to project. They all seem so different, but they're very deep and they're very thoughtful. I'm curious if you've recognized any commonalities among your work.
They all have a strong point of view.
That's
I
true.
think that's for me, that's the unifying thing. With all the films that myself, my company make, we talk about that a lot. Of like, we shot a comedy in the spring, and we're shooting a drama that starts shooting on Friday, and we talk a lot about like, just as a, like, I hate this word, but like as a brand identity, like how are people going to know that like one of our films is from us? And that's always the thing. It's a strong point of view. Like and movies that don't pull punches. I think that's really critical too, is that like you have to find, whether it's something that I'm directing or whether we're working with another director, I want to work with people who absolutely insist on going as far as we possibly can with the thing that we're doing, and never aiming down the middle. Like if we start having discussions about like, oh, will this work for a wide enough audience? Will enough people be able to relate to that? Like, get out now. I'm not interested in making that film. I'm not interested in doing that. Like, yeah, do I want the films to be commercially successful? That'd be cool. But what's most important to me is creating a piece of art that's going to speak really loudly to the right audience and to the people who need to be hearing that message. And I don't mean message in like a social issue sort of way necessarily, but that message in terms of like, this art speaks to me, it means something to me, it's going to mean something to me in 5 years. Like maybe that's a lofty goal, but those are the projects that have like meant something to me, and the things that I can go to, like when life sucks or whatever, you've got something that for whatever reason you connect with, and it makes your day a little better.
So which of your projects have you learned from the most?
Oof. I mean, oh God, it's like I don't want to give like a horribly politically
Like
correct.
picking your favorite child. Yeah.
Like, that's a tough one. This one was probably, I learned from we need to do something in different ways than the other projects, simply because, this was my first narrative film as a director. And I thought, I've worked really closely with some really great directors, particularly in my collaboration with the Polish brothers over a very long period of time, in which I worked extremely closely with them. And I thought I knew what I was doing going into this. Like I really did. I felt like overly confident and overly prepared going into day one of shooting this movie, until when you show up on set for the first time and you're the person that has to answer that specific set of questions, it's different. And all the experience that I'd had as a producer working with other filmmakers, it paid off. It was like after I got through the initial like shock wave of the first half of the first day, that's when it all clicked in. But yeah, I would say that this movie was a unique learning experience, but they all are. If you're not learning something different from each experience, then you're probably not looking deep enough into the things that you're doing.
Yeah, that's well said. Well, we're out of time, but this was wonderful. I appreciate the thoughtful conversation, and I look forward to what you do from here. But this was great. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. Great questions. This is a lot of fun.
Not a tornado. Something else.
I was scared.
Scared of what?
Of you.
We did something bad.